I resumed the GR11 trail from the village of Setcases, where I stopped it in May this year. I started the hike late. At the last minute, I decided to repack my bag, change the order of my equipment and other small things. As a result, I only left the hotel around 8 o'clock in the morning. The morning, of course, started with ascent. I had planned to get to refuge de Uldeter in the first 4 hours of hiking. I hoped to fit in the planned time because it was the first day of the hike and I was full of strength. The weather forecast for today promised rain, so getting to the top of the pass in time was very important. In the valley near Setcases, the signpost to refuge de Uldeter said 3 hours and 15 minutes. However, after 30 minutes of hiking, the next signpost showed 3 hours and 40 minutes. I had already forgotten how contradictory these signposts for the trail can be. After 1 hour and 10 minutes, I had already reached the point where the trail turns off the asphalt road. The smooth surface was replaced by a trail covered with sharp stones. A cow stands with its feet in a mountain spring, and there she not only drinks, but also relieves her natural needs. That's why it's important to use water filter even if the water seems relatively clean. At least 200 more meters had to be climbed. But at that time I was full of strength and walking fast, so I should have reached refuge de Uldeter faster than originally planned. The half-eaten leg of some poor animal indicated that some kind of predatory animals also tend to wander into this region. Signpost to Nuria, 5 hours, 35 minutes. Refuge de Uldeter was visible at the top. I reached the refuge in 3 hours 12 minutes, which could be considered a relatively good result. Cloud cover was already starting to gather on the mountains, and I had to hurry further. I usually don't film people, but this chick was awesome. While I was barely dragging my huge backpack, she ran past at a brisk pace. At an altitude of over 2,400 meters, the landscape became much more barren. Up on the Col de Marana pass, a strong wind was blowing and it was difficult to stay on feet. After a while, thick fog began to envelop me. Another 3 hours and 30 minutes to Nuria. Despite the strong wind and fog, there were a lot of hikers on this section. Looking back towards the village of Setcases, I could see that everything was under one huge storm cloud. And I hoped that I would manage to escape the storm. Being up here during the storm would not be pleasant. In the distance I could see the Cabana de Tirapits, where I could try to take a shelter during a storm. But since such cabana huts are nothing more than piles of stones, and are also often full of all kinds of rodents and cockroaches, I usually don't go inside them. The trail markings showed that I had to go up over the pass. The view down to lakes on the French side, Estany Blau and Estany Negre, was simply fantastic. At Col de la Vaca, the climb was much more rugged, and I remembered the warnings of other hikers that this section was quite dangerous in fog and bad weather. But luckily for me, the signs were visible and the trail was not too slippery. The crosses on the no-cross path reminded me that the line between life and death in the mountains is very fragile. The sign showed that I had to go down, although on the offline map the trail should have continued forward along the ridge for a while. Looking back at the crosses again, I went down. Being equipped with offline navigation maps, I also helped a couple of lost girls find the right path, who, like me, were heading in the direction of Nuria. The storm clouds above Nuria forced me to move faster. I had to get down as quickly as possible and find a place to pitch my tent. The cross signs near signpost to the direction New France Pass also indicated that this part of the trail was indeed closed, and that I had headed down from the New Cross Pass correctly. As I crossed the river, a strong smell of dead animal hit my nostrils, and the source of the smell was visible very close to the river. The poor cow was rotting there already for some time. As I approached Nuria, I came upon a well-maintained road. In addition, it was clear that the sun was still quite high, and that theoretically I could still continue the hike for at least few hours. When I reached Nuria, I had a meal and rested a bit. The next settlement was Keralps, about 8 kilometers away. Since it was only 5 p.m, I thought that I could make it to Keralps by daylight, or at least find a place to pitch a tent near the trail. After filling up water, I decided to continue on my way. Initially, Keralps didn't seem far away, and the trail was going downhill. However, in the following hours, the rain and the fog, as well as the wet stone trail, took their toll, and the road to Keralps took longer, despite the fact that at times I even ran. The road signs also showed that it would not be possible to reach Keralps in originally planned 2 hours, and realistically at least 3 hours should be expected. My speed was reduced despite my La Sportiva Ultraraptor Mid GTX boots, which are very suitable for such a surface. From time to time, a train from Keralps to Nuria passed by. The canyon between Nuria and Keralps was very beautiful. However, the canyon-like terrain was not suitable for pitching a tent. Also, some of the places I found looked like they would flood during the rain or had sharp rocks at the bottom, which prevented me from setting up my tent there. In addition, the weather forecast for the night promised a serious thunderstorm. Therefore, driven by despair, I decided to book the last available room in this area, near Keralps. Darkness was approaching quickly, but the road signs were not encouraging. There was a high chance that the remaining hours would have to be spent in the dark. Of course, I was prepared for this. I had a headlamp, but still not very convenient. The situation was increasingly reminding of the first day of the hike in the spring, when, having set very ambitious goals, I brought myself to complete exhaustion. Not far from Keralps, right on the edge of the trail, I managed to find a place for a tent, but I had already booked a hotel at that time, so I moved on. Although, according to the map, the accommodation looked right next to the village of the Keralps, in fact, a deep ravine led to it, which took almost additional hour to cross. In reality, I arrived at the accommodation just before dark, and the planned warm-up day turned out to be very long and tiring in reality.